Hey, my name is Carter. I'm getting my bachelor's in philosophy at the University of West Florida. I chose to go into philosophy because, from what I've heard, and I found it to be true, when you take courses in philosophy, you do learn to think more logically, more precisely. You learn to really say what you mean and not almost what you mean. We have lots of interesting courses too in a philosophy program. You take things like philosophy of science. I took a class, I'm not sure if I should mention it, called Philosophy of Sex and Love, which was quite interesting. There's philosophy about everything. So whatever you're interested in, you can study philosophy about that subject. I'd like to go on to get a master's and then a PhD and teach at a university. I know some people take philosophy to go into law school, and some people I know are getting their certification in applied ethics, which you can actually work as a consultant for something like a hospital or a business firm or even anything like that. I joke all the time that if you get a philosophy bachelor's, you're going to have to work at Whataburger for the rest of your life. But there's actually some practical options you can go for, teaching or being a consultant or even being a lawyer, any of those. If you are thinking about going into law school, I've often heard that philosophy majors do the best on the LSAT, except for biology majors. That for some reason they do the best, but I'd have to say philosophy would be more enjoyable for me. But if you do a philosophy major, you will probably do very well on the LSAT, the entrance exam for law school. My favorite part, there are several things that I've enjoyed about being a philosophy major. I can't say like universally, but most of the philosophy majors that I've known have been very friendly, outgoing people. So it's really fun to get into a program like that where everybody kind of knows everybody else. And I don't know about other majors. I'm sure it's true for lots of majors, but I know that a philosophy major, you really are improved by your education. You become a more thoughtful person. You might become a more rational person. You learn to look at things from different perspectives. You learn to be sympathetic of people with other perspectives, and all that. I feel like I've really learned a lot of that from being in the major. So when I first came in to the philosophy program, I knew, I didn't know, I figured it would be a lot of fun. I didn't really expect that it would actually be hard, but it's quite hard. You have to read some really dense, thick stuff. You have to read some articles that are like 10 pages long that might take an hour to get through because you have to read it and reread it to get all the content. And reading is about half of the work that I've done as a philosophy major, just reading sources and stuff. The other half is probably writing about those sources. And when you write about them, you might not have to do a lot of research, like find a whole bunch of sources or something, but you have to really dig deep into the sources that you read. You have to analyze, and you have to really put thought into your paper, which I don't know if you might be very good at that. You might be very good at that, but the teachers do expect it, just as a warning. It requires a lot of mental effort. I wish when I had first become a philosophy major that somebody had told me, if you read some philosopher, no matter how famous or how important that philosopher may be, if you think the philosopher is just talking nonsense, you should just say so. Because it's very intimidating. They throw like really big fancy words at you, and most of them are very good writers and they're very thorough. Sometimes they are just talking nonsense, and it's good to call them out on it. Don't just say like this is stupid or this isn't worth my time, but say this doesn't make sense, or how does that work, or what does that look like in the real world, something like that. John Locke is a very famous philosopher, and that was pretty much his entire strategy. He would call out people that he disagreed with when he thought they were just making stuff up that didn't actually make any sense. Well, I think I have advice. If you're thinking about going into a philosophy major, I have some specific advice and some more general advice. And the specific advice is, I would suggest that you read a lot of really basic philosophy stuff before you go in, because a lot of the work is just going to be reading, and if you're already familiar with it, then it's going to be a lot easier. So I would read things like Plato for sure. Everybody should read Plato because he's just fun to read anyway. I would read Descartes, probably David Hume. I would try to read a philosopher named Quine, but he's very difficult to get through, so don't worry about it if you can't get through him. For my more general advice, I'd say you have to be confident in your abilities to think. You do need to be respectful of the teachers, the people who are like well versed in the discipline, because they know what they're doing. But there comes a point where you just have to say, you know what, I do know what I'm talking about, and that's what I'm going to put in my paper or bring up in class or whatever. And you have to really enjoy it, I would say. Not like if you're doubting it, don't go into it, but you have to be sure that you would enjoy doing that, because it's not really a major that you can just kind of slide through. So be sure that it's fun.